Strobe Studios presents Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger in The Watson Files.
Whose was it? His who is gone. Who shall have it? He who will come. What was the month? The 6th from the 1st. Where was the sun? Over the oak. Where was the shadow? Under the elm. How was it stepped? North by 10 and by 10, east by 5 and by 5, south by 2 by 2, west by 1, and so under. What shall we give for it? All that is ours. Why should we give it? For the sake of the trust.
Richard?
Good evening, sir. I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd do a little reading.
What have you got there?
Nothing but a few verses from your books of poetry.
What's this? My safe is open.
Sir,
Richard, you've breached my trust. The Musgrave ritual is a family secret. Give it back to me now.
Of course, sir. I am horrified to have offended you.
What were you hoping to gain?
Only a better understanding of your family.
And what are all these maps for?
I was looking at them before I stumbled upon the safe.
I see, Richard. I'm afraid that you cannot stay after this transgression.
Sir, please do not fire me. Let me have 2 weeks to come up with a reason to resign, and I'll go. I'd like to retain some of my honor.
You can have a week, but after that I don't ever want to see you again.
Of course, sir. Sir, the old elm tree that was taken out by lightning last year, how tall would you say it was?
It was almost exactly 86 feet tall. They measured it before they hauled it away.
Yes, I recall. Thank you, sir.
Now, not more than a week, Richard.
Coming to you from the illustrious Strobe Studios in the heart of America, this is Scott Strosahl. Now, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.
Come in.
Hello, Dr. Watson.
Hello.
I believe you're going to tell me about a rodeo clown tonight, right?
So I was, but I was just thinking about another adventure that Holmes and I went on where we found an important piece of history.
Oh?
Yes. Holmes had a visit from an old friend, and after his friend had left, he called me over, as he often did, to go over the details. I went at once.
Come in. It's unlocked.
Good evening, Spencer.
Good evening, Doctor.
So, what have we got going on tonight?
I've just been visited by an old college chum, Reginald Musgrave.
We had dinner with him a few months ago, didn't we?
Yes, it seems he has run into a bit of trouble. 2 members of his staff have gone missing.
I see. Well, what do we know?
Reginald caught his butler, Richard Brunton, in his library sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning. The man had accessed some private family documents, including some ridiculous bit of poetry titled The Musgrave Ritual. Here, Reginald provided a copy. He dismissed the man, but allowed him a week to set his affairs in order and resign.
A kinder gesture than I'd be capable of at such a late hour.
A few days later, Brunton vanished from the estate, and Reginald assumed that he had simply fled in disgrace, though he left behind many of his belongings.
You said that there were 2 people who disappeared.
Yes, Rachel Howells, who was Brunton's former lover, had a hysterical fit when she was asked about Brunton's whereabouts. Apparently, she sat in her room repeating over and over that he was gone, such that Reginald had to post a guard at her door. 2 nights ago, the guard nodded off, and Rachel slipped away out of the window. They followed her footprints to the edge of a pond on the outskirts of Reginald's property.
So he thinks she ran off and drowned?
Reginald had the lake dredged, but they found only some mangled bits of metal and some colored bits of glass.
Sounds like there are 3 mysteries to be solved then.
3?
The 2 people and the sack of metal and glass.
I suppose that they could all be separate, but I suspect that there is a great deal more at play here than we would be first led to believe by the evidence at hand.
That's all that we know?
Only one other matter of curiosity. Richard, before he left, asked quite a lot of questions about an old elm tree that had been struck down on the property.
Why?
I believe that the Musgrave ritual holds the answer to that question, Watson.
There is a reference here to an elm tree, but there's something about an oak tree as well.
I think it's time that we paid another visit to the Musgrave estates, Watson. I should like to rest this evening and have at it tomorrow. Will you come along?
Indeed.
It is a very lovely day for an outdoor adventure, Watson.
Which is why we're headed inside, of course. Whose car is that coming up the road?
I imagine it's Dr. Worth. I've asked him here in case we find a body or two.
You're pretty confident that you've already worked this out already, aren't you?
That would be the logical deduction, old friend.
There's where the elm tree used to stand. Right there near that old oak tree.
Indeed, which only serves to solidify my theory that the Musgrave ritual is more than just a family tradition.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, it's good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Dr. Worth.
Such a lovely day.
Quite right. Watson and I were just saying the same thing.
Have you managed to locate Mr. Darwin yet? I've got a book I'd like to return to him.
No, Craig hasn't been over for several weeks. I'm starting to worry.
I'm sure he'll turn up eventually. He usually does.
Yes, I'm sure he will. I'll just hold on to it then.
Well, shall we then?
Quite right.
Good afternoon.
I'm Spencer Holmes, and these are my associates, Doctors Watson and Worth. We're here to see Mr. Musgrave.
Of course. Please come inside. He is expecting you. You can wait here in the sitting room. I've laid out a tray of cakes and a pot of tea for you while you wait.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're quite welcome. Will you require anything else?
No, I think that will do just fine.
I will let Mr. Musgrave know that you are here then.
Where are they keeping these bodies that you wanted me to look at, Mr. Holmes?
We haven't found them yet, but we will.
I see. Should I call Officer Weathers then? He'd probably like to know if we found a body.
No need to get Max involved just yet. He'll just prattle on about the inconvenience of being brought here without any evidence to support his presence.
And just this once you thought you'd spare him the humiliation of you being right and him being wrong?
I was feeling generous when I woke up this morning.
Who are you, and what have you done with Spencer Holmes?
Don't worry, Watson, I'm still myself.
Ah, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Reginald. You know Dr. Watson, and this is Dr. Adam Worth, the medical examiner.
Pleased to meet you, Dr. Worth. Dr. Watson, I am pleased to see you again, though I wish it was under better circumstances. As do I, but don't worry. I think we're just about to the bottom of your problem. You are?
Yes, but we'll need to take a walk around your property, and I shall need to know the height of the elm tree that no longer stands in your front yard.
86 feet.
Excellent. Now come, we've got a map to follow. Gentlemen, as it is now the 7th month, and the sun is directly overhead such that the shadow of the elm would be beneath it, I believe we can follow the butler's path. 1, 2...
Holmes, we've been walking this way for half an hour. Are you sure you're not lost?
No, Watson, we're not lost. Here is the place. Yes, look here, a peg hole in the ground. And a ring. There is a cellar here.
Well, I'll be. Shall we open it?
We could leave it shut, but then we'll not find the answers to your questions. Dr. Worth, would you mind?
No, of course not. Lend me a hand, Dr. Watson. This stone is extremely heavy.
Certainly. Oh, that smell.
Oh, it smells like death.
And so it is. There, if I'm not much mistaken, is your butler, Reginald.
Yes, that is Richard.
Oh, I'd guess suffocation. There's a wooden box down here. It's empty, though.
Then someone else was here with him, and after he'd retrieved the prize that your family has protected, he was shut up inside and they absconded with the treasure.
How do you know it was a treasure?
Watson, it was in a wooden box buried in the ground that one had to count paces to locate.
Ah, right. Of course.
Thank you for seeing it my way.
Sure.
All right, Reginald, I'm ready to see the medal and bits of glass now. I trust you brought them along as requested.
Yes, just a moment. Here you go.
Adam, what would you say these are worth?
Well, they look like gems, don't they?
They do seem to be more than just glass.
If these are real emeralds and rubies, then I'd say their value's priceless.
I suspect that they are indeed just that, and that these fragments are, in fact, actually gold.
Gold, emeralds, rubies, my goodness.
I believe I have seen enough to render the solution to your mystery to you, Reginald.
I am still clueless as to what went on here.
Yes, well, in college you never stopped talking about your royal lineage.
Yes, my family is descended from kings.
Until now, I've had no cause to dispel that untrue fact, but this is the moment for which I've waited.
What are you talking about?
Some 200 years ago, a relic was stolen from the royal family, the Eye of Charles I. Not an actual eye, but a delicate golden artifact bedecked with jewels.
Yes, my father told me the story as his father told it to him.
And as you told it to me, it was your ancestor who owned the eye and from whom it was stolen.
Yes, that's right.
It is, however, the case that your ancestor was the thief who took the eye. The remnants which were not broken apart and sold to purchase this estate are the contents of this parcel. It has remained under the protection of his family for these last 200 years or so.
Ah, that cannot be.
Why else would the item that was stolen be in the possession of the people from whom it was purported to have been taken?
But what about the butler? How did he find it?
He also deduced that the riddle was actually a map and not a ritual at all. The originating Musgrave must have perished before he could pass on the true meaning of the riddle.
Why didn't Brunton just take the gold and jewels for himself then?
He made a mistake. Opening the cellar required the combined strength of you and Dr. Worth. He would have needed help.
And he chose his former lover.
The woman probably disliked him, and he hoped to win her favor with the promise of wealth.
That didn't work out very well for him.
No, either she kicked away the support, that broken stick there, on purpose, or it broke after he handed out the treasure. Either way, it explains her peculiar behavior.
And she was so riddled with guilt that she threw the priceless treasure into the lake.
Having examined the lake, there is little chance that she did not also meet her fate there. There are no indications that she left the edge other than to go into the water.
But Reginald dredged the lake.
Then they missed the body. A more thorough search will turn her up, I'm sure.
Thank you for shedding some light on the subject, Spencer.
It's no bother. I'm afraid that we'll have to see this to a museum, however, Reginald. Be glad that there is a statute of limitations and that we can't charge you for your family's crime, though you are an accomplice, to be certain.
Please, just take it.
Did they find the woman?
No, they did not. And that baffled Holmes. I think he even went down with some scuba gear to check for himself that she wasn't there.
Well, I'm sure she'll turn up eventually.
Perhaps. But that's a story for another time.
Well, that was very interesting, Doctor. What story are you going to tell us about next week? The rodeo clown?
I suppose that can be arranged.
Good. See you then.
Indeed.
Tonight's Watson Files adventure was an adaptation of a story written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and was written by Michael Helgens and directed by Scott Strosahl. Spencer Holmes and Dr. Watson were played by Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger. Additional voices were provided by Steve Rimpici, Elizabeth Herb, and Beverly Mead. Until next week, this is Scott Strosahl saying good night from Stroby Studios.
You okay? What happened?
Or nothing. I'm weird today.
She's gaining the giggles.
I'm gaining the giggles.
Welcome aboard. Excellent. Now come, we've got a map to follow.
Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for shedding some light on the subject, Mr. Holmes. Why would I call you Mr. Holmes? You're my friend. Thank you for shedding some light on the subject, Spencer. Reginald's a weird guy in my head.